Okay, before we get into our routine, let's spend a minute laying on our back and just observing how our body feels today. Helpful things to pay attention to is how your body's making contact with the ground. Notice if there's a difference between your left foot and your right foot. Behind the knee on the left side, behind the knee on the right side. How the back of the thighs on the left side is making contact versus the right side. An important part will be the low back. Many people feel a difference here with how the pelvis, the sacrum, and the low back is making contact with the ground from side to side. And also, same thing with the upper back and shoulders. This is another common area that feels different for many people from side to side. So take stock of how it feels now, and then after you finish your routine, come back to this position and see if anything has changed. In this exercise, you're going to lay on the ground with your knees bent. Go in and out with your knees a little bit to find a nice neutral position. You want your knees aligned with your toes here. Then it might be helpful to put your hands on your chest, because what we're going to do is take a deep inhale, deep breath, and expand the chest as much as possible. Then on the exhale, you want to be expanding the stomach as much as possible. And what you might want to do is poke around at the stomach, and what you'll notice is that it begins to engage a little bit as it expands. That's what we want. And you're just going to go back and forth with this seesaw type of breathing for the next 2 minutes. And what you really want to start thinking about when you inhale is allowing yourself to the rib cage to expand as much as possible. It doesn't really matter if it's the nose or the mouth. Nose is probably preferable, but what's most important is that you take all the air that you possibly can, really open the chest, and then when you exhale, you allow the stomach to similarly open and expand as much as possible. And the chest will go in, right? So the chest kind of tightens and comes down, and same thing with the stomach on the inhale. The stomach compresses as the chest opens up. Things to pay attention to also is what your neck is doing, right? We're not trying to breathe with the neck muscles or the shoulders. This is all coming from the diaphragm, the stomach, the chest, right? So keep everything low, keep everything in the chest. Expanding the chest, and then when you exhale, we're expanding the stomach, and you should almost feel the low back flatten against the ground, and that stomach engaging a little bit at the core. And I'm doing this for 2 minutes here. You could do it for longer if you want, but 2 minutes should be good. It's a great way to start practicing proper breathing. Good job. In this exercise, make sure your feet are aligned and pointing straight. Place a yoga block between your knees, and from there you're going to lay back on the ground. And you want to make sure you're in a good position, so just take your time, check your pelvis, make sure you're not hiking in any way or rotated in a weird way. And one more check of the feet to make sure they're pointing straight and are hip width apart. From there, you're going to rest your arms to the sides and try to make sure that your arms are in the same position on both sides, so you're nice and balanced throughout your body. And what we're going to start doing here is doing gentle squeezes into the yoga block, right? So we're going to squeeze for 1, 2, 3 seconds and then let go. And every time you let go, you really want to relax the hips completely. So every time you contract, you're going to squeeze 1, 2, 3, and then fully relax. And you're going to be doing that for the duration of this exercise. Anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 minutes is good. And not only are we trying to contract the inner thighs here, we're also trying to relax them after each contraction. Another thing to pay attention to is if other parts of the body tries to get involved, right? Is the neck shrugging? Is the upper body getting weird and tight? Or the lats contracting? Or the abs contracting? So if that happens, reset, relax, breathe a little bit, and try to keep this exercise dedicated to just the hips, right? This is a hip exercise, not an upper body exercise. So squeeze for a few seconds and then relax. And you're going to keep doing those types of pulses and see if one hip is working more than the other. You have to change anything there. Again, just observe and see if you can get a little bit more balance with each contraction. So we're observing things happening. Another thing you might notice is that one hip towards the end of the exercise, gets a little more fatigued than others. Again, nothing we have to change right now, but just something to observe and pay attention to, because this does give us a little bit of a peek of what else is going on with our body on a day-to-day basis. So once you get to about 2 to 3 minutes here, you can relax, and these are the adduction squeezes. In this exercise, we're going to lay on your back on the ground, and we're going to spread our legs apart and our arms out like I'm doing in this video. The arms are above your head, and when you're ready, we're going to start lifting the left arm. Now, it's important when we lift our left arm, we don't just throw it right into the air kind of unconsciously. We want to lift the arm with no other muscles involved than the arm muscles, and in particular, the shoulder and rotator cuff muscles here. Every time the arm comes down, reset and see what else is happening in the body. Maybe some other muscle group is trying to help out. Maybe the low back is starting to arch. Nothing else should relatively be happening other than the arm lifting and the muscles of the arm helping you get there. For many people, when they first start doing this, they may feel some numbness, they may feel some other sensations happening. That's all good. That just tells you that this is an important exercise for you. And that's what happens when you start focusing on allowing the left arm to do what the left arm is supposed to do, and what the shoulder is supposed to do, and in some sense what the rest of the body is supposed to do when one limb is trying to be lifted off of the ground. So see if you can coordinate the lift with the breath too. So you want to be exhaling when you lift, and then come down for the next breath. Take a breath and lifting with the exhale. So shake it out for a few seconds here, and we're going to do the right side. So as I started saying on the left side, every time the arm comes down, take another breath, and right before you exhale or when you exhale, you can lift that right arm up into the air. Every time that arm comes down, it's another opportunity to assess what's going on in the body. Did your pelvis move? Did your low back move? Did something happen in the lower limbs? None of that should be happening, right? So maybe on the next rep, do less, right? Raise the arm with a little less effort. Try to really pay attention to just the muscles of that right shoulder and right arm lifting that limb. And it may not happen the first time you do it. It may not happen the first few times you do it, but in time, you'll notice that it gets easier, and that takes practice, right? And it just takes practice to allow the rest of the body to calm down when your brain is sending messages to one limb to do its job, right? So don't get frustrated in the beginning. This takes time. If it's easy for you, then you know that this isn't a hard one for you, right? So whatever it is, take stock, take note of how this feels, and then pay attention to how it changes over time. In the three-way ankle raise, you're going to want to hold on to something in front of you to avoid shifting forward as we do these calf raises, right? Instead, we want to maintain our body weight in the middle of our feet and arches, right? So as you can see how I'm doing the first version of this, where my hips are in a neutral position, my feet are hip width apart, I'm just going directly up, and I'm not shifting the body weight forward in order to perform the calf raise. So that's the purpose of the support that you have in front of you. And you may notice that there is an inclination, or the body may want to shift forward, but use the support in order to help you stay back, right? And really use the calves with their intended function. And you want a nice steady pace here, not going too fast, not flying through these, and really trying to feel the calves engage with each rep. And that's a minute. So now we're going to place the feet out and externally rotate the hips. And now we're going to do a minute of calf raises from this position. And it's important to do it in each hip position like this because it's a way to challenge the entire chain, lower chain of our bodies in this plantar flexed position. So we should be feeling the different muscles in the ankles work depending on which hip position we are in. And if you find that one of these positions is more challenging or more difficult than the others, then you know that's an area of focus for you. And you may also notice that in one of these positions it's harder to not have the body shift forward, right? Maybe in the externally rotated position your body really wants to shift forward and you really have to use some new muscles in order to keep the body weight back and raise the calves up in the air. So that's a minute in the externally rotated position, and now we're going to touch our big toes together and we're going to have our hips in internal rotation and again do 1 minute of calf raises here. Paying attention to how this different hip position changes the exercise for you and whether it's more challenging with the hips internally rotated or externally rotated, and just taking note of that. Doesn't mean we have to do anything about it right now. Doesn't mean there's anything to fix or alter in the exercise, but just observing and paying attention to how our bodies function. And especially in this internally rotated position, you may feel interesting things downstream by the ankles because other muscles that you may not be used to are going to be contributing to this movement. So we're getting to about a minute here. Good job, and finish off whenever you're ready. To start this exercise, stand near a wall and you're going to bring your arms out in front of you and lock your elbows out. Then you're going to walk to the wall, and when your hands touch the wall, you're going to take 2 steps behind you. From there, you're going to contract the quads the best you can, and then you're going to drive your hips back while bringing your upper body down. You want those feet about hip width apart and pointing straight. From here, it's important that you maintain that contraction in the front of the thighs. You're probably going to feel a nice stretch in the calves and hamstrings, which is good, but we don't want it just to be a calf and hamstring stretch. We want to make sure the front of our hips are also working. Moving on to the upper body, those shoulders are coming down and away, and they're trying to work along with the hips here. It's not the neck that's taking too much of the work and tension here. So keep those arms straight and keep those shoulders active throughout this exercise. One thing that you could play around with, and you don't have to do this right away, is to try to get a little bit more of a low back arch and a little bit of an anterior tilt. It's more important for the hips to be aligned with the ankles. So imagine like there's a straight line coming from the ankles to the hips. Now, if that is not happening, make that a priority. Try to get those hips back enough to get them aligned with your ankles. If they are aligned, then you can start experimenting with that anterior tilt to get more of the front of those hip flexors working and getting engaged. But just like with all the exercises we do, don't try to get too many cues at once. What's that one thing you want to work on today and focus on that? If it's just getting the hips back enough, it's just getting the quads contracted, focus on that until you master that part of the exercise and then move on to the next. We got about 20 seconds left here, so let's continue breathing. Continue contracting those quads, keeping those legs straight, and relaxing the neck. And great job. That is the counter stretch. Okay, now that we've finished the routine, let's go back on the ground, lay down, and just like before, let's take note of what's going on in our body. How is our body making contact with the ground now, after the routine, compared to before the routine? And you don't have to go systematically like you did before the routine, because you probably are aware of how things felt. So go straight to the most obvious areas and see what's changed. Maybe one side of your low back is making contact more evenly than before. Maybe your shoulders feel more even than before. It's going to be unique to you. Every experience is different. So every single time you do these routines, come in objectively, come in without judgment, and see what changes.